everyone. Thank you, Gustav, for the introduction. It's a joy to be with you today to discuss how to harness the radical potential of the digital experience. I'm here with three incredible speakers on this topic. Let me introduce them briefly before we get into the debate. We have with us Elisabetta Galli. She is the Global Head of Knowledge, Development, and Talent at Grupo Santander. Also with us, Daniela Proust, the Head of Global Learning Campus at Siemens. And finally, last but not least, Barry Lumpkins, Global Director of Leadership and Talent Development at DP World. Thank you all for joining us on this very exciting topic. Let me start the discussion with an open question to the three of you around this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to change your organization, and what has been the role of L&D in this change? Chances are that the organizations you worked in back in December last year look very different from what they look like today. So let me open the floor. Daniela, Elisabetta, please jump in and tell us about how has L&D helped that change, and what are the skill sets that you have helped foster?
Thank you, Teresa. Actually, L&D in the case of Santander played a major role, because I still remember the moment in which the president of Santander, Ana Patricia Botín, announced that she wanted, so her vision for the future was to have Santander transforming itself from a very powerful and first-class commercial bank into an open financial services platform. This was the second half of 2018. And I still remember the moment because being an HR professional, together with my team, we look at each other and we said, wow, this is really, really good stuff and cool stuff. Because you can imagine moving from a totally traditional, though very strong environment, moving to something completely different in terms of business model, in terms of roles, processes, skills. This was really challenging for us, but this was really something that excited us a lot, because as HR professional, and especially L&D professional, we felt we could make a difference. And actually, this was the case because we started rethinking completely all the roles, the skills, etc. And we started to implement the strategic workforce planning methodology in Santander that helped us to identify the critical skills for the future. So the required skills for transforming Santander into a completely different animal, an open financial services platform. And this exercise was, on one hand, quite scary, but on the other hand, not a big surprise, because what we discovered was that 60% of our workforce, and we are 200,000 people, 60% were in need to be upskilled, reskilled for 90% of the skills they were currently displaying. So considering the magnitude of the effort, this really scared us a little bit, but we just started thinking how to do that in a sustainable way and in a quick way, because the pace of change was something that Ana Botín reiterated during the communication process. So we have to be quick, we have to be fast, we have to accelerate. And that's why we started identifying the critical skills for the future. Not a surprise that they were in the area of digital transformation, cloud, and agile, and everything was related to the new way of working, and data science, data management. And we started thinking about how to transform our L&D ecosystem in order to be digital, sustainable, cheaper, and faster.
Okay.
If I may add to that.
Please, Daniela.
I could just jump in. So I work for Siemens. Siemens is a technology company, a bit like what we just heard from Elisabetta, quite big, more than 380,000 employees across the world. And I think we are a driver of change in terms of technology and digitalization, but it also is the major driver for us, for the business models, for coming from producing products or solutions then to software as a service or dealing with platform business models. So it's a major change, as you were also already referring to, Elisabetta. So when I think of learning and development at Siemens, I think we are on a huge transformation and we have embarked on that already a while ago. We call it learning of the future since, let's say, 2 years. And it has just turbo boosted since January. It has just accelerated in a way that, of course, nobody could foresee. And I can only tell you, I'm so glad that we embarked on it early on, that we had embarked on a quite disruptive path, because otherwise it would have completely overwhelmed us. So we were at least ready. And I think that's what we see in the businesses too. When disruption comes, can you keep up with the pace of change and can you adapt quickly? That's the question. And that applies now also for, I would say, corporate functions or service functions. It's the same thing. It's not only on the customer facing roles or for the businesses, it's really for the whole company. So when I think of learning, for me, it's we have to learn more, not less, continuously and lifelong. And that's the mantra that we try to put as a culture and into the DNA of the company. It's not easy to do. It's quite difficult to do. And I think that works motivation, inspiration, and making it relevant to the individual, to the respective business and organization, and to the company as a whole. And that is really quite an interesting endeavor. And the overall targets that we are having, the objective is really speed and scale, increase the reach, and therefore really accelerate the time to skill and competency development. That's a major driver that I see just turbo boosted through the corona pandemic that we have seen.
A great perspective, interesting. Barry, give us your own experience on the role of L&D in transforming and supporting the business change. What has been your experience?
Sure. Yes, thank you, Teresa, and it's great to be here, by the way, with Daniela and Elisabetta. I've had quite a unique experience because my first day in DP world was actually March 8th. So I came into this global role and I had exactly 1 week in the office to get my computer up and running, and then I've been basically working from home ever since. And so have built my relationships, et cetera, with my team and the broader stakeholders completely virtually. And I think what we decided as a team was that we would take full advantage of the fact that the entire global company was basically forced to go through a kind of a digital transformation program without wanting to. Yeah, all the employees were. So we would take full advantage of that, and we just decided as a team that we would be a highly impactful L&D function that operates completely virtually until we had a reason to think otherwise. And so it's really kind of started with us pushing the envelope. And then I think a couple of ways we really came in and really tried to build connectivity across our business as much as possible, because particularly those first few months, I think people they were so hungry to connect, learn, and understand how other people were grappling with what was happening. And then to sort of build on that, we then really looked and kind of nudged, let's say, a lot of our senior leaders and executives out front to really, be as open and authentic as possible about the fact that they were going through the same things as everyone else, and talking about their own challenges as a parent and as a leader, and trying to operate in this new space. And so I think those were some of the successful ways we really supported the business. And then I'll say we also worked with some somewhat outside the box solutions. For example, this past summer, we launched a fully virtual DP World summer camp for all of our kids, all of our colleagues' children globally, that focused on STEM education and really answering the question, what does mom and dad company actually do? And we had hundreds of kids around the world participate in that. So we're looking at ways to support parents as well.
That's excellent. It's interesting to hear the three of you talk about your experiences. Some interesting takeaways, and again, this is helpful context for the rest of the audience to now start, diving into the digital experience per se. But what I see it's interesting is number one, L&D playing a key role as part of the business transformation. The three of you started this process before Corona, and it has been, a positive news that it actually has accelerated it. Let me just maybe share a data point that our at IE University, the Center for Corporate Learning Innovation, run a little piece of research in the summer, and it was very interesting to see that approximately 60% of the companies surveyed actually focused on training on business critical issues. So L&D and the business were closer than ever, because I hear what you're talking about, right? Sort of the strategic skill planning, and how do we do to, Elisabetta, in your case, to upskill and reskill 60% of your workforce. And I know, Daniela, you have also a large organization with, similar challenges. And what's interesting is that it's not a side project. It's very core to actually continuing to delivering this new environment. So anyway, just a very helpful context for how L&D is actually helping that transformation and is becoming really core to the business. Let me just move on to the digital component of the upskilling and reskilling. And by the way, it's fascinating, Barry, to hear that you're also including the families into this experience now that we can, right? So I'm going to ask the audience to give us a sense for what do they think once the restrictions driven by COVID are over. What do you think is the new normal in terms of forms of delivery? While they answer those questions, why don't you share with all of us, and Elisabeth, I'm going to start again with you. How have you managed to make virtual learning more engaging and more effective? Because now it's, we'll see it, but it's becoming a larger portion of your training, at least for now. How can we deliver a fundamentally different experience?
Yeah, this has been one of the critical points of the challenges we had. Unfortunately, we started thinking about this new way of delivering learning before COVID, many months before. And as my colleagues commented, the COVID pandemic really found us a little bit more prepared. So with the COVID, all the people around realized that we were in a kind of learning platform. We didn't have any more options than apply a different way of delivering training. So more engaging. What we did in Santander when we started the preparation, the creation of our platform was to look inside, because our platform is a connector. So our strategic decision was to connect, to plug into this new platform all the local ecosystems in terms of L&D. So we cleaned what we had. We made a very thorough and deep analysis of the content we had, and we landed on a number that was very little in comparison with the big amount we had at the beginning. So it was about 2,500 learning objects. And then that worked okay, quite good for the digital platform. And we started to rethink and rebuild this content in order to be much more engaging, transforming what we had into a real learning experience. This has been a challenge, and is still a challenge, because this is a completely different job. So people in L&D, traditional people in L&D, are not prepared to do this work, and so we had to use external experts to join us and to teach us how to do it. And so if you think about a common course, a training course or a training object in an online learning experience, this is something completely different. So the learning experience adapted to a digital platform must be something that really engage the audience and take the audience through a journey that is a nice journey, a pleasant one in which they have fun while they are learning. And this is something very technical. This is something requiring a new skill set that is not very common yet in the L&D community. This is also related to the other big challenge we still have, is reconverting, so moving our people from a traditional role to a new role in L&D. So we carried out basically our strategic workforce planning in our department, and we started acquiring new skills and experiences using external experts and really learning ourselves what to do this new job.
Yeah, no, this is great. And thank you for sharing how you've built your platform and designed those journeys. Let me just hold on the topic of how the L&D teams have had to adapt, just because I think there's a whole theme right there that I want to dig deeper into. Daniela, maybe, do you want to talk a little bit about how have you advanced in making those digital experiences more engaging and effective? And you were talking about the very important time to scale and time to competency. You know, help us learn from your experiences.
Yeah, thank you. So I think it all starts with understanding or have I would say the principle or belief that careers are not linear anymore, that they are much more an option room, and that therefore careers are very individual. They're not going up the ladder. So it's and therefore also the learning and development is very individual. And I think that is a fundamental shift in terms of careers that we see particularly boosted through digitalization. So that is why I think platform and technology is a huge component to enable an individual learning and development experience and to help the learner that it's useful and relevant for the individual. So, I always see it a bit like you're on a journey, as we just heard, and everybody is equipped with a different backpack of skills, competencies, and experiences, and therefore also has a different need in that particular moment for the respective role at hand or for the next one to come, because also maybe the next one is something you had not anticipated before, or you didn't even know that that job was invented. So it is therefore everything that we are now providing as learning offerings and instruments and support to our employees has to be in a way that we move from a directed approach of teaching and bringing learning to a broad audience more to a guided but self-directed learning. The people need to understand where are they, what are the next topics that are relevant, and they know. It's not that we have to tell them what is now the next AI topic that you should be aware of, right? The communities, they are very active and they know what the next topics are. So we use them kind of radars in our own organization to see what is going on in the communities, what are the topics that are being discussed, what are also maybe sometimes the keywords they are searching for, because that can help us prepare what is the next content that we need to be able to provide.
Daniela, sorry for the interruption. You were talking about designing a journey and providing options. And it's actually interesting because Elisabetta also talked about the digital experience as a journey that is fun and engaging. You're bringing in an interesting topic, not only the optionality, but also the community, which again was common in what Elisabetta was describing. So the visibility of what are the things that I can be trained on and I can engage on is one of the ways to make it more engaging. The community is another one. Very interesting. Barry, anything you want to share on that dimension?
No, look, I think, just a couple of things that have really come out, at least our insights, and I'm speaking with a lot of my peers in other industries as well, is the overwhelming importance of great, impeccable instructional design when you talk about virtual delivery. And there's a number of reasons for that. When you're sitting in front of a screen, uh, losing a participant, losing their focus is so easy to do because most of us have our Outlook open, we have other applications, we have a mobile phone sitting there. It's a lot easier to kind of keep people's attention when you're in a physical space, but it's very easy to lose them virtually, which means that by design you need to have interaction points with people. We're designing everything 2 to 3 minutes maximum before you're interacting, you're breaking out, you're connecting people in some way. So I think the instructional design has to be impeccable. And I will also say that the flip side of that we're already starting to think about is, and it goes along with the Slido poll that we had, is I think that when we can bring people back together, especially when we talk about, global cohorts that we work with, the expectation of what the in-person experience will be very different. In fact, I think it will be much higher. Because the last
Fascinating.
thing you want, if you bring people together, is for someone to say, we could have done this on Zoom.
Fascinating. Can we actually build on that question? Because I think it's an interesting, the poll was saying that roughly 20% of those companies would actually go virtual by default. But what seems to be, true for the majority of the organizations is that we've actually balanced out the virtual delivery versus the face-to-face. So face-to-face is not disappearing. May I just, any additional comments of how do you envision face-to-face now that a lot of things can be done virtually? So what is the face-to-face about?
Maybe I can
Well,
share something.
oh, sorry, no, Daniela,
Okay, Daniela.
please go ahead.
We have asked ourselves that questions also quite fundamentally, and I think we are going quite disruptive that we put virtual as a default. However, we believe that there is a good reason to come together in a community or for certain groups, and that is mainly about creating relationships and bond and build networks, and that is absolutely important. But therefore, you have to really be clear about the objective that you have. So if it's really about knowledge transfer, conveying knowledge, you can do that in virtual formats, also in a very engaging way. But if it's really about the interpersonal, getting together and bringing people on board, physical experiences are important. Also, when it comes to driving innovation in terms of hackathons or things like that. And one other challenge that we see is, we have very different types of learning in Siemens, and I'm sure it applies for some of you too. For instance, we have the business-related learning, where I believe virtual is per default easier. When I think of our product schools, when it's about training on a huge train on how the system works, then sometimes it's not that easy. So there, to have a digital train completely set up, that you have the right experience, that you know how to drive it, it's quite a challenge. You can do it, but it's also expensive. So you have to pick your battle, what you want to do when.
It's a great point, Daniela, and I think it builds on what Barry was saying. So just go back to the instructional design concept and what is it that you're trying to accomplish, which with each session. And yes, I can imagine how sort of recreating the train experience digitally may not be all that easy. Elisabetta, you wanted to also share your view of
Yeah,
how to use the face-to-face learning.
I fully agree with Daniela. So I think the important thing is to keep in mind um, two words, synchronous and asynchronous, because as Daniela said, so the experiential moment, so the moment in which the community get together to share experience or to do something together, will never disappear. Probably with the COVID pandemic, we have learned that we can have a very good synchronous session virtually and digitally. So this will stay with us, and I think that in the future, when COVID will be gone, we will keep this very clear. So 80% will be asynchronous because it doesn't matter. As Daniela said, if you have to acquire knowledge, you can do it asynchronous in a synchronous way and through the platform. 20% synchronous when you have to get together with your community and share experiences. And so for me, this is something that will stay in the future.
So in this journey where L&D plays increasingly a fundamental role of supporting the transformation of the organization, um, what is the new skill set that's required for the L&D team? Barry, do you mind starting us on this question?
Sure. Sure. Actually, for me, there's really sort of three things I think that come to the forefront, and one of them I've already mentioned, and that is, rethinking instructional design, and particularly again getting really, really tight and concise on virtual instructional design because of some of the reasons I mentioned earlier. The second thing that we really have seen is both is a big challenge and an opportunity is virtual facilitation schools, which I think many of us will know. Just because someone was a great facilitator in a physical space does not necessarily mean it's going to translate into virtual facilitation. And in fact, I mean, as someone who has done this myself for many, many years, I think virtual facilitation is actually much more difficult because you're managing things like we're experiencing now as well, technical difficulties, right? So it's a much tougher type of skill set, and we have certainly worked really hard working with some external experts to upskill our team, but also we found ourselves having to upskill some of our existing external partners, not Headspring, but some partners. And then I would say, thirdly, yes, it's what we might call something like media production, and part of the virtual experience is the sort of these potential distractions around the facilitator. Now, I'm not using the equipment now, but what I can tell you is most of our team, my team, we have bought for them and shipped to their house professional lighting, professional microphones. We've basically helped them set up almost like a mini studio in their home to do this delivery because it has an impact on the experience. It really does. And we're almost complete in our corporate head office in Dubai. We've got 2 professionally kitted virtual facilitation studios with professional lighting, high def cameras, et cetera, that we will be using very shortly. And we always actually have a producer in the background. So, for example, if a participant's having technical difficulties, that person will jump and connect with them directly so the facilitator can keep the session going. So for me, it's really
Fascinating.
key. It's almost like in the olden days, you would have someone at a conference venue who was making sure the air conditioning was right and the coffee was good and all of that stuff because those things distract from the purpose of the program if they weren't done well.
Interesting. So virtual instructional design, virtual facilitation skills, and media production as a new skill set for the L&D team. Elisabetta, you touched on some of this before. What are the new skills that you see in addition to the ones that Barry has mentioned?
Yeah, I fully agree with Barry on the list, on the short list he provided. There is also another aspect that is new in the L&D team, and it's everything is related to data management and to digital marketing. Because when you run a digital platform, a learning experience platform, there are 2 big pillars that are the data you pull out in real time, reading the digital behavior of the users, and you need to pull out the data to manage the data and to prepare reports, personalized reports for the different stakeholders. And this must be done in real time because you have to correct the route very, very quickly. So the base of your process is a daily base. In the past, from the demand of a training to the delivery of the training, you could have 3-4 months. This is really the past. So now is daily. And marketing, because also thinking about the learning experience platform, you have to treat everything as a product, and you have to engage your audience, to propose campaigns to your audience, to read their behaviors and to pick their inputs, and to reshuffle, restructure what you are offering based on these inputs. These are skills that are completely new in L&D, for instance.
That's a great point, Elisabetta. Actually, before because I want to get into this topic of learning analytics, and Daniela, you're going to be next, but allow me to poll the audience again and get an understanding of what's the level of the competency within the L&D team on learning analytics. Julia, if you don't mind just getting Slido again, we'll love to get a feel from this. Now, Daniela, back to you. We were talking about, and you referred to earlier about time to competency, and as that being just a KPI in your organization. How do you think about and how do you use the learning analytics to deliver on that KPI?
I think that is such an important and really interesting topic, and we're just at the starting point, I think, to embark on a quite interesting longer journey, I would say. So I think when I think of learning analytics, of course, we have all the traditional instruments of number of participations and costs and regional split up by business and so on and so forth. And that is still needed, but it's always post, right? So you always look at what people have done. So I think combining that now with the new I would say opportunities that new technologies like a learning experience platform that we also have allow for is that you can look at user behavior data. So it becomes so much more important to see how, and there I think of, the goal has to be you have a visitor on the platform. How do you convert that visitor into a learner each time? So it's not that you have to win that person once. Yes, you have to win that person the first time to try out your platform. But actually, this battle starts every time. You have to convince every time somebody comes to you and wants to engage in learning. And that, I think, is something that you have to think about. I think it was mentioned in the previous panel. It's really about putting the learner at the center and really focus on the employee experience. And therefore, it's about having, of course, relevant content, but also how do you find it? How do you make sure that the relevant content really appears to that person? So it's really key that the system and the algorithms and the way you have set it up helps you to bring the most relevant learning to the learner. And then I think what for us is the next step that we are embarking on is to include skill management functionalities into our learner experience platform. What I think is that skills for us will become kind of a new internal currency, because what we are measuring in the past, or still measuring because we can, is of course learning hours, is data related to participation in courses to see what is really demanded a lot or not. But I think when we can match really emerging skills or really relevant skills and then have a more targeted approach to upskilling by mapping, let's say, learning objects according to skill level, and then you can also link it to certain roles and next roles that you want to acquire and accomplish. That is a complete new approach.
Interesting. So there is a theme here of, and thank you, Elisabetta, for bringing the data set of skills. So the theme here is, and you both touched on it. Elisabetta, you talked about marketing. Daniela, you talked about converting the visitor to a learner, right? So there's a first of, okay, what is it that I need to offer? And then a second is, how do I actually show the path towards, sort of making sure that they not only gain the skill, but they actually continue to progress. We'll love to hear from the three of you, and I will leave it open for whomever wants to start. What is the full potential of digital learning? What is it you wish you could do? How do you see this evolving in the next 2 to 3 years? Many questions in one, but please jump in.
So it's a big topic for me. The future is to have the employee or the user at the center and in the driving seat, deciding what, how, and when. And this is completely reversing the approach from push to pull. And what is important is that the user can pull from the platform what he or she needs, what is relevant, what is powerful to help the employee to climb his or her career ladder, but also to expand the possibility of learning to go to other areas. So stay relevant for the future, learn what you are interested in, but also what is relevant for your job to progress in your career, learn from others, stay in touch with your lookalikes, but also learn from other people that normally are not part of your immediate work environment. And the most important thing, the user decides, and the user is in the driving seat. I think this is the future.
Interesting. Let me build on that in a second because I have an interesting question for Daniela on who is in the driving seat, the user, the business owner, or maybe, but Barry, on your end, what's your vision?
Yeah, just a really quick answer. I think for me, the potential, and I've seen some small snippets, but it's probably going to take a couple more years. The potential of fully leveraging VR and AR technology, but around
Okay.
soft skills. But it's not at a point where it's good enough, both in terms of scalability and cost today. And the other is, I long for the day when hopefully more, if not most organizations can actually afford a kind of a learning experience platform, an ecosystem that is just as good and just as sharp as what we see people doing in their private lives. Right? We always talk about Netflix, et cetera, but oftentimes we can't seem to get it right in companies to have something that's that intuitive and easy to use that people use in their private lives. When we get there, then I think we'll see a lot more utilization.
Love that idea of making it seamlessly as we all use it at home. Daniela, just I will ask you for your vision as well, but I think it's interesting on the concept that Elisabetta was talking about, the push versus pull, right? How can sort of the digital and the digital world, but frankly, the opportunity to put L&D more at the center of the business, how can this change the dialogue, not only with the learner, but also with the business leaders? Any vision there? Any answer to that?
Yeah, I think learning is just becoming a fundamental core to the strategy of the company. It's maybe moving from being an HR topic to being in the center of HR to becoming into the center of the business strategy. Because if not, the businesses will not be equipped to master the challenges of their markets. So I think it's becoming a much more core topic, and therefore you have to be very close to the business to make sure that you also have the right topics addressed. And I think it's a bit more of a push and pull because we definitely also want to engage our employees on topics that we consider strategically relevant. For instance, at the moment, we are pushing a topic across the world on how do you lead in business ecosystems, because we just see it as such a fundamental topic driving our business and each function everywhere. It's a different impact per role and per business, but it has an impact everywhere. So, and I think sometimes it's about how to be smart about how to push, because also push you can do in a smart way by creating pull. So for instance, I think we have learned from our employees that they are saying people follow people. So how to use your business role models as ambassadors and maybe push content themselves and say, hey, follow me on my topic. I'm the expert in artificial intelligence. And they will follow him and see what he's posting, what he wants to engage in. So I think it's fun. It's just a very diverse approach where you have different instruments at hand, if you will.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments, Danielle, and thank you for the input on the future and the vision for the digital learning and how can we frame this into potentially a redefinition of L&D as so core to the business and business strategy. I'm mindful of time. This has been really great to have the opportunity to share experiences from your three amazing organizations. Thank you for being with us today.